This is a tutorial on how to make sublimation tumblers in 2 different ways without using a tumbler press. You will need shrink wrap and a heat gun, which is not pictured here, or painter's tape. I will show you how to use both in this video. Painter's tape you can get at Walmart, Home Depot, or any supply store. You also need scissors, or you can use a paper cutter, which I like to use, a heat-resistant glove to help with hot tumblers, as well as your sublimation designs, heat transfer tape, and of course, you'll need your sublimation tumbler. I also like to add a rubber bottom, but it is not mandatory. I just feel like it completes the tumbler. Today I will be using a convection oven. I also keep a thermometer inside to be able to keep an eye on the temperature and make sure it stays where it needs to be. I set it between 350 and 400, and I also go ahead and turn the knobs to stay on. Please note that it is not recommended to cook food in this after you have used it for sublimation because of the gases that can be released, and we also recommend that you have proper ventilation. While this is preheating, I will go ahead and cut these prints. I did print these myself, which is why it has a border. If you purchase it from someone else, more than likely it will be trimmed already for you. I'm using my paper cutter here. You definitely do not have to use a paper cutter. You can just as easily use scissors. I just usually like using the paper cutter because it's more convenient. It's a little bit faster for me to get those straight edges. Now that I have the design trimmed and ready to go, I go ahead and get it lined up so that I can get it taped to the cup. As you can see, I flip the cup upside down and tap it onto the table to make sure that the top of the design lines up with the top of the cup, and I start pulling the design together so that there is no seam. Then I get my heat tape and get ready to tape the edges, and I pull the tape as tight as I possibly can to make sure that there is no gap and make sure there is no ghosting. And by ghosting, I mean no excess white where the design does not show up because it didn't have enough pressure. With the tape, your tape that you're using is to help get that pressure that you would typically get from the heat press. But since we're not using a heat press, this is why it's important for the tape to be tight. As you can see, I went ahead and taped all the way down the seam of the cup. And then I'm getting an extra long piece of tape to go ahead and tape around the top edge of the cup. I like to make sure it's extra tight to make sure that there is no ghosting at the top of the cup as well. And then I will fold the edges of the tape inside the cup. Now I've taken a long piece to go down the seam of the cup as well to make sure that that design is nice and secure right at the edges, and then I run my thumbnail across that seam as well to make sure it's nice and secure. Now I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom of the cup where I take a long piece and secure the design to the bottom edge of the cup. Once we have secured the design onto the cup with the heat tape, I'm going to be using the first method where I use the painter's tape to wrap all the way around the tumbler to make sure that the design is nice and tight and gets enough pressure for the design to take to the sublimation tumbler. Once the cup is wrapped, we go ahead and put it in the preheated oven with the seam facing upwards so that we know that we haven't flipped it yet, and we set a timer for 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Once that 2 minutes and 30 seconds is up, we flip the tumbler over with our heat-resistant glove with the seam facing downward and set another 2 minutes and 30-second timer. Now that your second 2 minute and 30-second timer is up, you can use your heat-resistant glove to go ahead and pull that hot tumbler out. I recommend that you sit it on a metal or a silicone surface to make sure that you do not melt any of your surfaces. Once you have allowed the cup some time to cool down, you can go ahead and start pulling the tape and the design off of the tumbler. And here is the finished tumbler using our convection oven and using the painter's tape to secure the design. I'm going to go ahead and take a rubber bottom and put it on the bottom of the tumblers just because I feel like it just finishes the whole thing. Whenever I take these to craft fairs or have customers, I like to add my business card and like to add some little thank you goodies into the cup as well. Now that I have shown you how to secure the design with the painter's tape, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to secure the design with shrink wrap, which I get from my supplier. And you will secure the design first with your heat tape like you did before with the painter's tape. I would like to note that although I do get a bunch of my sublimation supplies from Amazon, I do not recommend getting the shrink wrap from Amazon. In my experience, from all the ones that I have purchased, it's best to get it from a crafting supplier because theirs can withstand the heat applied from the heat gun as well as the convection oven. Now that we have secured the design onto the cup with the heat tape, we will go ahead and put the cup inside of the shrink wrap sleeve and apply a light amount of heat from the heat gun to help the shrink wrap form to the edges of the cup. Keep in mind that if you get the heat gun too close to the shrink wrap, it could melt holes in the shrink wrap. As you can see here, I like to start from one end and work my way up. I spend a little extra time here once I've gotten it secured to make sure that I smooth out any wrinkles that is left in the shrink wrap. Once the shrink wrap is secured, I go ahead and put it in the preheated convection oven and set a timer for 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Once that's done, I go ahead and take a heat-resistant glove and flip the tumbler over and set an additional 2 minute and 30-second timer. Once it's done, I go ahead and take it out and set it on the table and let it cool down. Once it's cooled down and you can pick it up with your hands, you can go ahead and remove the tape and the paper. Now that my tumbler is complete, I go ahead and add my business card and all of my freebie goodies into the cup, and it's ready to go.